So welcome to the Painful podcast or the Painful vlog, whichever you want to call it. I'm the Painful and this space is for you. Welcome to the bonfire. This is also the grounds of fertility where we all come and we're teachable. We have fertile minds. We apply the things we've learned in our lives and we report the results and share them as gifts. Also, we have elders and we are always teachable. And we're not wandering lone wolves around here without any guidance. We have those elders. That's very important. So welcome. If you don't know who I am, I'm a full-time artist. I paint. I sell my art. I teach art to children and adults. I am a children's book illustrator. I do event photography. I do a bunch of other things. I call myself a multimedia artist as a result. If you want to inquire more about me, go to my website, jgreenartofficial.com. Okay, this is just a continuation from the podcast episode of Ego and the Ally. Well, Ego the Ally. So, remember how I said to you that I was going to provide an illustration of Ego the Ally? Well, here I am. So, I wanted to explore this a little bit more because fundamentally, the imagery that I have just kind of received from just hearing people talk about it for so many years has just been a thing for me. So since I have just wanted to explore that imagery and just kind of make an adjustment to it, it just changed my outlook on myself and how I handle myself and other people. Instead of just this kind of, you know how we have this horrible, majority of us have this horrible imagery that we associate with the ego as like the bad guy, as like this thing that gets inflated. It's like, ego, you gotta kill the ego, you know, all this stuff around something that's never going anywhere. And you have people going on these long pilgrimages and these huge sacrifices and going along these journeys of killing the ego and, going to extremes, jumping into a pile of syringes or taking ice cold showers with Bengay or like, I don't know, burying themselves 10 feet deep into the earth in the middle of the night in the desert. Like all these things to prove to themselves that they had it in them all along. Now, I will not say that those methods are not effective for everyone, but for myself, how I've learned to kind of just, which I will kind of illustrate and show you what I mean by this, is how I've learned to kind of get in sync with my ego or kind of just get in line with it versus placing it in front of me and identifying with all of my experiences versus identifying with the creator. It changed my life, you know? When you are let me just illustrate this for you, okay? To the iPad. So here's you, and this is your ego. Except the ego is not a person. The ego is a couple things. Primarily, it's an ability to identify. So, yes, you might have guessed it, it's a brain function. Therefore, it's not going anywhere. You can't kill it. The ego has no emotions. It has no will. It is simply an ability or a function. The ego simply says, this is this, or this is that. But often, you hear people referring to the ego as something negative or maleficent, such as, he or she is egotistical, when they really mean arrogant. And that could be the case that someone's arrogance is rooted in the sense of identity that makes them, in their minds, perceive themselves to be superior to others. Yes. But, again, that's not the ego. You may even hear different people in different spiritual systems profess killing the ego. And while it sounds nice, it's impossible. Trying to separate or kill the ego from the person makes your experience on Earth less human, or you would suffer severe cognitive challenges. To kill the ego is to kill the ability to identify any and everything. It's something that we do consciously and unconsciously, and it's never going to change. So rather than villainizing and scapegoating the ego, it's best to be grateful for it. Now, what is the identity? The identity, of course, is an aspect of the ego. The challenge in this is that many people identify themselves with their emotions, their experiences, usually traumatic, or their fantasies. And that leads to a poor sense of self. Thus, the way they view and see things or perceive and identify things is skewed. It is through the lens of trauma, pain, or fantasy. Your identity is simply rooted in the creator, who or whatever that is. Is your creator your experiences? Is your creator your pain? Is your creator your personality? In this world of autonomy, you can claim whatever identity you choose. But wouldn't it be better if you sat with yourself and did some homework and asked, who am I? Is it your ethnicity? Is it your faith? Is it your gender? Or is it your persona? Removing the imagery associated with the ego, the harmful imagery that is, forces one to think a little deeper into what we're saying when we're accusing one of being egotistical or otherwise. It forces one to center themselves in their identity or understand who they are and stand up strong in that and move forward in life. No more misidentifying and misdiagnosing others. More importantly, no more manipulating others into confusion. So, with all that said, how do we get a better sense of self or identity? 1, your bloodline, your family, your ancestry, your likes, your dislikes. Are you fixed? Are you mutable? And are you able to travel between the two? What is your moral code? What are your principles? What is your life's mission? And how does that show up in your occupation or your ministry? Just a couple tips. Now, unfortunately, some people in leadership tend to misidentify, misdiagnose, or even manipulate a select few of the populace into a master and slave relationship through subtle programming into codependency. That's no bueno. And then you will find others, who I identify as elders or coaches, whose function is to guide you to your own light. As a matter of fact, they frown upon codependency and do their very best to keep you from needing them for long. Elders are the most egotistical. You ever notice how quickly they're able to call things out within you? Their ability to identify and call things as they are is epic. So be careful not to allow yourself to become manipulated into nothingness, because although we are in between the two worlds of nothingness, we are all indeed something. So, know for a fact that you're something, regardless of what anyone says. Learn you're something, but in all things be teachable. And so when a person says that you're egotistical, you just reply, duh, aren't we all? I am the painted fool. And until next time. So let's just if we can baptize our minds or cleanse our minds from the imagery that we associate with the ego and just change that a little bit. And that way, people aren't walking around guilty for having confidence or because some people are misdiagnosed, or some people are they're guilted into changing their personalities or changing who they are. And these aren't even dysfunctional qualities that they have. These are just genuine qualities, and they go down this identity crisis and they spiral out of control because they've been guilted into into becoming someone that they're not. And then they go down this identity crisis. They have to figure out who they are, and they come back to I didn't realize this was who I was all this time. I just was afraid of being who I really truly was in the beginning. It's a vicious cycle, and so many people manipulate others into that. I can tell you from personal experience. It's wild. But at any given rate, just if anything, if that doesn't help you, I just want to explore that a little bit more, that whole ego thing, because you got a big ego. You can't have a big or small ego. It's not possible. You're either arrogant or you're not, or but the ego, let's leave the ego. Let's not misidentify. And I know it's not all about the semantics and all that stuff, but it's the imagery. So many people have imagery, what they think the ego is, and it's not. And if I can provide imagery, then maybe we'll change our usage of our blaming of certain character flaws on the ego, which is absence of character. It's nothing. Leave it alone. Leave the ego alone and have a good day. The ego is innocent. The ego is your ally, you know? So I said all that to say that, you know, just, okay, the painful is out.